Amelia's scalp gleamed like polished bone in the morning light, every stubble catching the sun like scattered thorns. She sat on the porch steps of what used to be her home, her trembling fingers tracing the brutal geography of her shorn head. The hair lay scattered in the dirty yard behind her, long strands that had once cascaded to her waist, now trampled into the dust by her late husband's family. Agnes Blackwood had hissed as she'd worked the razor. "You think we didn't know about you and that Mexican? You think we're fools." But Amelia hadn't been with Mateo Garcia. She'd only spoken to him twice. Once to buy grain, once to ask directions. The truth didn't matter to the Blackwoods. Walter had been dead 3 months. And they wanted her gone from the land that had been his, that should have been theirs. The hair was just the beginning. They'd stripped her of dignity first. Property would follow. Now she sat waiting for nothing, wrapped in a threadbare shawl that couldn't hide the shame written across her naked scalp. The Blackwood brothers had ridden off at dawn, satisfied with their work, promising to return with papers to claim the homestead. Agnes had spat at her feet before climbing into the wagon. "Be gone by sundown or we'll do worse than shave you." The morning stretched endless and hollow. No neighbors would help. The Blackwoods owned half the territory, employed the other half. Amelia had nowhere to go, no family to take her in. She'd married Walter straight from the orphanage in Kansas City, followed him to this godforsaken stretch of Nevada territory, where the wind never stopped howling, and the alkali dust turned everything white as bone. That's when she heard the hoofbeats. A lone rider approached from the eastern hills, his horse picking careful steps through the sage. Amelia pulled the shawl tighter, but there was no hiding what they'd done to her. The man dismounted at her gate, tall and weathered with silver threading his dark hair. She'd seen him in town, but never spoken to him. Corbin Hayes, owner of the Arrowhead Ranch, one of the few men in the territory who didn't bow to Blackwood money. He studied her for a long moment, his gray eyes taking in the devastation of her appearance. Then he spoke, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd never had to raise it to be heard. "You're coming with me." Amelia's hands flew to her head, pulling the shawl forward. "I can't. Look at me." "I am looking." Corbin's voice held no pity, which somehow made it easier to bear. "And I see a woman who's been wronged." Nothing more, nothing less. She wanted to refuse. Taking charity from a stranger felt like another kind of shame, piled on top of what the Blackwoods had already heaped upon her. But pride was a luxury she couldn't afford, not with night coming and winter only weeks away. "Why?" The word scraped raw from her throat. Corbin adjusted his hat brim against the climbing sun. "Because what they did was wrong. Because I've got space. Because," he paused, something flickering across his weathered features. "Because my Rose would have wanted me to." The past tense didn't escape Amelia's notice. She'd heard whispers in town about Corbin Hayes's wife, dead these 5 years from fever. Some said it had broken him. Others claimed it had made him harder. Looking at him now, Amelia thought maybe it had made him lonelier. "The Blackwoods won't like it," she warned. "They'll say you're harboring their property." "You're not property." His tone could have cut steel. "And I'm not afraid of the Blackwoods." But Amelia was afraid. Afraid of what it meant to accept help. Afraid of what people would say, afraid of the debt she'd owe this strange, stern man who looked at her shorn head without flinching. Most of all, she was afraid of hope. The treacherous thing that whispered, maybe she didn't have to face this alone. "I have nothing to give you in return." Didn't ask for anything. Behind them, dust clouds rose on the horizon. Riders coming fast. Amelia's blood turned to ice water. The Blackwoods, returning sooner than promised. Corbin followed her gaze, his hand dropping instinctively to the Colt at his hip. "Decide now," he said quietly. "Stay and face whatever they've got planned, or ride with me." Amelia looked at her little homestead, the cabin Walter had built with his own hands, the garden she'd tended, the life she'd tried to build. Then she looked at the approaching riders, counting at least 6 men. The Blackwood brothers, their hired guns, maybe Sheriff Brody, who'd been in their pocket since the day he pinned on the badge. She stood on unsteady legs, the shawl slipping to reveal the full extent of their cruelty. "I'll come." Corbin helped her onto his horse just as the riders crested the hill. Amelia pressed against his back, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart beneath his vest. The shawl whipped behind them as they rode, but she no longer cared who saw her shame. Behind them, shouts erupted. Gideon Blackwood's voice carried on the wind. "Hayes, you bring her back here." But Corbin only spurred his horse faster, taking them through arroyos and over ridges with the confidence of a man who knew every stone and shadow of this land. The Arrowhead Ranch spread across a valley sheltered by red rocks, the house built solid and square against the elements. Corbin helped Amelia down in the yard where a Mexican woman emerged from the kitchen. "Isabella," Corbin said simply, "this is Amelia." "She'll be staying." The older woman took one look at Amelia's shorn head and nodded grimly. "Yes, patron. I prepare a room." But even as Isabella led Amelia inside, they could hear it, the thunder of hoofbeats growing closer. Through the kitchen window, Amelia watched the dust cloud approach, her stomach clenched with familiar terror. "They're coming," she whispered. Corbin checked his rifle, his movements calm and methodical. "Let them come. You don't understand. They'll burn you out. They've done it before to anyone who crossed them. Then they'll learn something new today." 6 riders surrounded the house, their horses stamping and snorting. Gideon Blackwood dismounted, his face flushed with anger. His brothers flanked him, Bo with his cruel smile, Finn fingering his gun belt. Sheriff Brody sat his horse like a man who wished he were anywhere else. "Hayes!" Gideon's voice cracked like a whip. "Send out our property." Corbin stepped onto the porch, rifle loose in his hands. "Don't see any property here. Just a woman under my protection." "That woman belongs to us. She was married to our brother." "Your brother's dead." "The marriage ended with him." Bo Blackwood spat into the dirt. "She dishonored his memory. Running around with that greaser, flaunting herself." "That's a lie," Amelia called from the doorway, her voice stronger than she felt. Gideon's eyes blazed. "You calling us liars, harlot?" Corbin's rifle came up an inch. "Call her that again." The silence stretched taut as a bowstring. Sheriff Brody shifted uncomfortably in his saddle, hand hovering near his badge, as if remembering what it was supposed to mean. "Last chance, Hayes," Gideon growled. "Send her out or we'll take her." "Over my dead body." Bo laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "That can be arranged." Time crystallized into heartbeats. Amelia watched from the doorway, her hand pressed to her throat, feeling the weight of every choice that had led to this moment. 6 guns against 1, no matter how skilled Corbin might be. She'd brought death to his door. Then Isabella appeared beside her, carrying a shotgun like she'd been born to it. "Isabella, no," Amelia whispered. "Sigh," the older woman replied firmly. "This is home. We protect home." From the barn came another sound. Boots on boards. A young man emerged, rifle in hand. Then another from behind the house. Ranch hands, Amelia realized. Men who worked for Corbin Hayes. Men who'd stay and fight. Sheriff Brody cleared his throat. "Now, Gideon, maybe we should." "Shut up, Brody." But Gideon's certainty had cracked. 6 against 1 was odds he liked. 6 against 6, with Corbin Hayes' reputation factored in, was something else entirely. "I'll go with them," Amelia said suddenly. "This isn't your fight." Corbin didn't turn around. "Yes, it is." "Why?" The word tore from her chest. "Why risk everything for someone you barely know?" Now he did turn, his grey eyes holding hers. "Because the day we stop protecting those who can't protect themselves is the day we stop being human." He paused, something soft creeping into his voice. "And because Rose always said the measure of a man isn't what he does when people are watching. It's what he does when no one would blame him for walking away." Amelia felt something break open in her chest. Not the brittle crack of heartbreak, but the warm flood of belonging. This strange, stern man who'd offered sanctuary without questions, who spoke of his dead wife like she still guided his choices, who'd rather die than surrender someone under his protection. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once, then turned back to face the Blackwoods. "You've got your answer. Ride away, or we settle this now." Gideon Blackwood's face contorted with rage and something else, the dawning realization that his power had limits, that there were still men in this territory who wouldn't bend the knee to Blackwood money and threats. "This isn't over, Hayes." "Yes," Corbin replied quietly. "It is." Sheriff Brody was the first to break. He reined his horse around, tipping his hat to Corbin. "Miss Amelia." "Mr. Hayes." "I'll be heading back to town now." The spell shattered. Gideon Blackwood cursed, but the moment had passed. Without the sheriff's badge to hide behind, they were just 6 men threatening a fortified ranch. Even Blackwood pride had its limits. "You'll regret this," Gideon snarled, but he was already backing toward his horse. "Doubt it," Corbin replied. They rode away in a cloud of dust and wounded pride, leaving only the whisper of wind through sage and the distant cry of a hawk. Amelia sank onto the porch steps, the weight of terror and relief making her legs unsteady. "Is it over?" she asked. "It's over." Corbin sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. "They won't be back. Gideon's not fool enough to start a range war he can't win. And my homestead? I'll buy it from them. Fair price. Keep them from burning it out of spite." Amelia turned to study his profile, the weathered lines around his eyes, the silver threading his temples, the quiet strength that had saved her when she'd had nowhere else to turn. "Why are you doing all this?" Corbin was quiet for a long moment, watching the sun sink toward the red rocks on the horizon. "Rose and I, we never had children. Always meant to." "But," he shrugged. "When she was dying, she made me promise something. Said there'd come a day when someone would need what we couldn't give each other. Made me swear I wouldn't let loneliness make me selfish. Is that what this is? Keeping a promise to your wife?" He looked at her then, really looked. His eyes taking in her shorn head, her worn dress, the strength that had carried her through shame and terror. "Started that way," he admitted. "But maybe it's something else now." Amelia felt heat bloom in her cheeks. Not the burning flush of humiliation, but something warmer, more fragile. "Corbin, I don't know. You don't need to say anything. Just stay. Work the ranch if you want. Rest if you need to. Figure out what comes next when you're ready." She nodded, afraid to trust her voice. Around them, the ranch settled into evening quiet. Isabella humming in the kitchen, horses nickering in the corral, the soft lowing of cattle in distant pastures. It felt like home in a way her little homestead never had. That night, Amelia stood before the mirror in the guest room Isabella had prepared. Her reflection still shocked her. The stubbled scalp, the 2 large eyes in her thin face. But something had changed. The shame was still there, probably always would be. But it no longer defined her. She'd found something worth more than hair, more than pride. She'd found a place where she belonged. Years later, when her hair had grown long again, and silver threaded through the auburn, Amelia would tell her children about the day Corbin Hayes had saved her. Not from the Blackwoods, she'd saved herself from them by choosing to leave. He'd saved her from something worse, the belief that she was alone in the world. But that was still to come. Tonight, she simply touched her fingertips to the glass and whispered, "Thank you, Rose," to a woman she'd never met but would spend the rest of her life trying to honor. Outside her window, the Nevada stars burned bright and eternal over the Arrowhead Ranch, where a broken woman had learned that sometimes sanctuary comes not from running away, but from finally finding the courage to run toward something worth having. If this story touched your heart, drop a like and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I love hearing from viewers around the world. Also, do subscribe for more tales from the Wild West. Until next time, keep your hearts open to second chances and love in life.